"Please take her in," the child whispered, and the cowboy faced a past he couldn't escape. The sun was just beginning to sink behind the jagged cliffs of Tarnak Ridge, casting long, orange shadows across the dry, dusty ground. The wind whispered softly through the thin tufts of silver grass, carrying with it the faint scent of metal and sand. Jace Harding, a weathered cowboy with sun-creased skin and sharp, cautious eyes, leaned against the side of his outpost. His fingers absently traced the worn wood of the doorframe as he watched the horizon. Life on the edge of human-settled space was lonely, but Jace had learned to accept it. The frontier was harsh, unforgiving, and full of surprises. Most people in the settlements called him stubborn, some called him brave, but Jace didn't care about titles. He cared about surviving and keeping the little corner of the galaxy he called home intact. It was a quiet evening, the kind where even the usual sounds of the wind felt different, almost like the world was holding its breath. Jace squinted at a faint glow on the horizon. At first, he thought it was just the reflection of the dying sun on some distant rock. But then the glow grew brighter, sharper, moving toward him. Something was falling. Jace straightened, his hand instinctively moving to the side of his holster. His heart began to beat faster, not out of fear but caution. On the frontier, unexpected arrivals usually meant trouble. He squinted through the dimming light. There it was, a small spacecraft, spinning slowly, smoke trailing from its damaged engine. Without thinking twice, Jace jumped onto his hoverbuggy, kicking up dust as he sped toward the crash site. The craft lay in a shallow crater, its metal shell scorched and dented. A strange silence followed its impact, broken only by the faint hiss of escaping air. Jace approached cautiously, scanning for any life signs. Then he heard it, a tiny, weak voice. He followed the sound to the wreckage, carefully lifting pieces of twisted metal. There, huddled under the shadow of the spacecraft, was a child. She couldn't have been older than 10, with wide, fearful eyes the color of twilight. Her hair fell in messy strands across her face, and her small body shivered despite the warm evening air. She clutched a small, glowing object in her hands, something Jace didn't recognize but felt immediately significant. "Hey, it's okay," Jace said softly, kneeling beside her. "I'm not going to hurt you." The child's eyes widened and she pressed the glowing object closer to her chest. "Please take her in," she whispered again. Her voice quivered, Jace's brow furrowed. Who are you talking about?" The child shook her head, refusing to answer. She looked up at him with a mix of fear and hope that made Jace's chest tighten. There was something strange about her, not just her calm in the face of a crash, but the way she seemed, aware, almost beyond her years. Without another word, Jace gently lifted her into his arms. The girl didn't resist. She only whispered again, almost to herself, "Please take her in." Jace climbed onto his buggy and started back toward his outpost. The ride was rough, the ground littered with jagged rocks and shifting sand, but the child remained still, as if she trusted him completely. Jace glanced down at her, noticing the faint glow from the object in her hands pulsing softly. Whatever it was, it seemed to respond to her presence. By the time they reached the outpost, darkness had fallen. Jace set the girl on the wooden floor and took in the details of his small home. It was simple, a single room with a cot, a small table, and shelves of tools and supplies, but it was safe. It was warmth. "Sit here," Jace said, pointing to the cot. "I'll get you some food." The child nodded, still clutching the glowing object. Her eyes darted around the room, curious but cautious. Jace filled a small bowl with water and some nutrient paste, offering it to her. She hesitated, then took it slowly, her hands trembling. "You're far from home," Jace said, more to himself than to her. He noticed the faint markings on her clothes, symbols that didn't match any human design he'd seen. They glowed faintly under the light, almost like the object she held. The girl finished her food quietly. Then she said something that made Jace freeze. "You remember, don't you?" He blinked. I don't understand." "You promised long ago," she whispered, her small hand reaching toward him. "Please take her in." Jace felt a chill run down his spine. That phrase, it wasn't just a plea, it was a key. Something deep inside him stirred, memories long buried in the shadows of his mind. Memories he had worked hard to forget. He shook his head. I don't remember," he said, though a part of him knew it wasn't true. The name, the plea, the way she looked, it all felt like a fragment of a dream, or perhaps a promise he had made and lost somewhere along the way. The child looked up at him, her eyes steady despite her small size. "You will," she said simply, almost like a statement of fact rather than a request. Jace sank onto a chair, running a hand through his hair. The frontier had taught him to deal with the unexpected, but this was something else entirely. He had always believed that the galaxy was vast and full of surprises, but never had he imagined one would land on his doorstep in the form of a fragile child, carrying a mysterious glowing object, and a plea that seemed to pierce straight into his soul. Night fell completely, and the stars above stretched endlessly, glittering in the cold vacuum beyond Tarnak Ridge. Jace kept watch near the door, glancing at the child every few minutes. She had finally curled up on the cot, her breathing soft and even, the object resting beside her like a tiny heartbeat. The wind outside whispered again, as if carrying secrets across the barren land. Jace's mind wandered to the past, the missions he had left behind, the people he had lost, the promises he had broken. And now here she was, a living reminder that the past never truly stays buried. He didn't know where she had come from or why she had arrived here or what exactly she was. But one thing was clear. His quiet, lonely life on the frontier was over. Somehow this child, fragile, mysterious, and unafraid, had found her way to him. Jace looked down at her, softening despite the weight of his own doubts. "All right," he whispered. "I'll take her in. Whatever it takes, I'll keep you safe." The child's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time a small smile crossed her face. The glow of the object in her hands brightened just slightly, as if responding to his words. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of the universe, a sound of possibilities, of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. And for the first time in many years, Jace Harding felt a spark of hope. The frontier had always tested him, had always demanded resilience and courage. But this was something more. This was a challenge that would reach into the deepest corners of his heart, forcing him to confront the past he had spent a lifetime running from. And as he sat there, watching the child drift into sleep, he knew that tomorrow, the real journey would begin. Because in the vast emptiness of the galaxy, sometimes the smallest voices carried the heaviest truths. The morning sun spilled golden light across the outpost, cutting through the shadows of the tall cliffs. Jace Harding stood outside, hands resting on the railing of his small porch, watching the horizon. The desert was calm, almost peaceful, but a sense of unease lingered in the air. Something about the child, Lyra, made the familiar terrain feel unfamiliar, as if it were hiding secrets he had forgotten. Inside, Lyra was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the cot with the glowing object resting in front of her. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. Her small fingers hovered over it as if she were listening to it. Jace watched quietly, sipping from a metal cup of water. He had learned long ago that some things were better observed than questioned immediately. "Morning," he said finally, breaking the silence. Lyra looked up at him with a small smile. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was calm, almost mature beyond her years, and carried a quiet confidence that both comforted and unnerved Jace. "Sleep well?" he asked. She nodded. "I did. The stars outside, they told me to rest." Jace blinked. "The stars told you," she nodded again, eyes focused on the pulsing object. "They shine for everyone, even if we cannot see them. I can sometimes hear them." Jace shook his head slowly. This was no ordinary child. He had known many things in his time as a frontier marshal, people with strange skills, advanced technology, and hidden talents. But Lyra was different. Her abilities seemed natural, as if the universe itself had shaped her. "Lyra," he began carefully, "where did you come from?" "Your ship," he trailed off, unsure how to ask without frightening her. Lyra's eyes softened. "I don't remember exactly," she said quietly. "I just woke up in the crash, but I know I was meant to find you." Jace's stomach tightened. The words echoed in his mind. "I was meant to find you." It was not a simple accident. Someone had guided her here, and somehow he was part of it. He decided not to press further for now. Instead, he gestured to the small table. "Eat something. We'll talk afterward." Lyra moved to the table, carefully eating the simple breakfast Jace had prepared. As she ate, he took a closer look at the glowing object. It was small, metallic, and etched with symbols that shifted subtly in the light. He tried touching it, but a soft warmth radiated from it, and he felt a strange hum in his chest. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Lyra shrugged. "It was with me when I arrived. It calls to me." Jace nodded slowly. Something about that statement sent a shiver down his spine. Calls to her or calls to me? After breakfast, Jace decided it was time to understand the situation more clearly. He packed supplies into his buggy and helped Lyra climb aboard. They had to reach the nearest settlement, a small outpost called Silver Hollow, a few hours' ride away. There, Jace hoped he could find someone who could help explain the child's origin and the strange object she carried. The ride was quiet at first. Lyra stared at the horizon, her eyes scanning the distant cliffs and valleys as if reading a map only she could see. Jace kept glancing at her from time to time. "Do you know who you are?" he asked gently. Lyra paused, her small hands resting on her lap. "I know what I am meant to do," she said finally. "And I know you. You promised long ago, even if you do not remember." Jace's heart tightened. Her words reminded him of the fragments he had buried deep inside, memories of a mission years ago, of a child he had promised to protect, and of a choice he had made that had changed everything. He shook his head, trying to focus on the road. "We'll talk about that later," he said, though the words felt weak even to his own ears. As the hours passed, the landscape changed from rocky plains to rolling hills dotted with strange, metallic plants. The terrain seemed alive, responding subtly to the wind and the light. Lyra's gaze never wavered from it. She reached out occasionally, and the glowing object pulsed softly as if in response. By mid-afternoon, Silver Hollow came into view, a small cluster of buildings nestled beside a narrow canyon. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the distant hum of machinery suggested life. Jace slowed the buggy as he approached the main street. Settlers paused, curious at the sight of a lone cowboy with a child and an unusual glowing object. They reached the town square where an older woman, the settlement's communal leader, came forward. She was called Mara, and she had a reputation for wisdom and fairness. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Lyra and the object. "Who is this?" Mara asked gently. "This is Lyra," Jace said. She came to me. I'm not sure where she came from, but she needs help." Mara studied the child closely, then nodded. "You brought her to the right place," she said softly. "We've seen signs, but never someone like her. She is special." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "I can help," she said. "I can speak to them, the ones watching." Jace frowned. "The ones watching? The stars," Lyra said simply. "And others beyond the stars. They are curious. I can show them we mean no harm." Mara's expression changed subtly. She glanced at Jace with concern. "This is bigger than either of us," she said. "If the wrong people see her or the wrong beings, trouble could follow." Jace's mind raced. "The wrong beings, like aliens," Mara nodded. "Yes, there are those who observe the expansion of humanity. They have rules and they are cautious. Some are curious, some are dangerous." Lyra's eyes glimmered. "I only want to help them understand, and I want to help you too." Jace shook his head, struggling to reconcile the enormity of the situation with the quiet life he had known. "I don't know if I can help anyone," he said quietly. "I barely keep this outpost running." "You have already helped her," Mara said firmly, "and sometimes the smallest actions can have the greatest impact." Lyra smiled faintly. "Yes, he saved me. That is why I am here." Jace's throat tightened. There was something in her words, something that reminded him of the promise he had made long ago, the one memory he had buried deep inside, hoping it would never resurface. Now it had returned, stronger than ever, carried by this small, fragile being. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Jace wanted to understand more about the glowing object, and Mara wanted to ensure Lyra was safe. Together, they worked on small tests, simple devices that measured energy, sound, and light. Lyra interacted with each tool naturally, sometimes even predicting their behavior before it happened. The settlers watched in awe. By evening, Lyra had learned to manipulate the object slightly, causing it to project faint holographic images of stars, planets, and unknown structures. One projection was especially clear, a map of a human colony, thought lost decades ago. Jace leaned closer, his heart pounding. "That's impossible," he whispered. "That colony was destroyed." Lyra looked up at him with calm certainty. "It was not destroyed, it is waiting, and you have a part to play." Jace's hands tightened on the edge of the table. He had spent years running from his past, from mistakes he thought had ended everything. And now, here it was again, rising before him like a challenge, carried in the small hands of a child. As night fell over Silver Hollow, the settlement glowed softly under the stars. Lyra sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the sky, while Jace stood nearby, lost in thought. Something about the child, her presence, and the mysterious object told him that this was only the beginning. The frontier had always tested him with storms, sand, and isolation, but this was different. This was a test of understanding, of trust, and of courage in a way he had never imagined. Humanity's ingenuity, kindness, and resilience, qualities he had always believed in, would soon be tested on a scale far greater than a single outpost. And as the wind whispered through the canyon, carrying the faint hum of distant machines and the shimmer of starlight, Jace realized something vital. The galaxy was alive with watchers, and Lyra was the bridge between them. The journey ahead would not be simple. It would challenge everything he thought he knew. But for the first time in many years, he felt a spark of purpose, a light in the vast emptiness of the frontier. And in that light, the cowboy and the child prepared to face whatever came next together. Because sometimes, the smallest beings carried the greatest truths, and the frontier held more than just dust and rocks. It held the promise of discovery, connection, and hope. The morning sun rose slowly over Silver Hollow, casting soft light over the desert hills. The settlement was quiet, but Jace Harding's mind was not. Since the arrival of the child, Lyra, the world felt different, larger, stranger, and somehow filled with unseen eyes. He had always known the frontier could be dangerous, but now the danger was not only from the harsh land or human greed. Something, or someone, was watching them. Jace stepped outside his small outpost, brushing the dust from his coat. Lyra was already awake, kneeling by the glowing object she had carried since the crash. The soft pulse of light seemed to respond to her presence, flickering like a heartbeat. She hummed a quiet tune, almost like a song, and the object responded with gentle waves of energy. "You're up early," Jace said. "I wanted to watch the horizon," Lyra replied. "There are signals, I can feel them." Jace frowned. "Signals?" she nodded. "Not from here, from far away, from others. They are curious about us." Jace's stomach tightened. The words reminded him of Mara's warning, the Watchers, the ones observing humanity's expansion. He had hoped they would stay hidden, but Lyra's presence seemed to call them closer. "I'll stay close," he said quietly, unsure if she could hear his thoughts. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes bright. I know you will. You always keep promises. The word struck Jace harder than he expected. Promises. That one word tugged at something buried deep in his memory. He remembered a mission long ago, a human colony on a distant planet thought destroyed. He had been there, sworn to protect the children of that settlement. And one child, one small girl, he had promised to keep safe. But he had failed. He had lost her, or so he thought. He shook his head, trying to push the memory away. He couldn't let the past interfere with the present. Not now. Let's get moving, he said. We need to gather information before anyone finds out about you or that object. Lyra nodded and carefully tucked the glowing artifact into her satchel. They mounted the buggy and set off toward a small ridge overlooking the desert. From there, Jace could scan the horizon for any unusual activity. As they traveled, Lyra spoke quietly, almost to herself. I think they are close, watching, waiting. Jace kept his eyes on the landscape, noting the faint glimmers of light in the distance, reflections off rocks or perhaps something else. Who are they? He asked. They are not like us, Lyra said. They watch humans. They are cautious. Some are friendly, some are not. Jace's hands tightened on the handlebars. Friendly or not, Lyra shrugged. We will see soon enough. The ridge gave them a wide view of the surrounding plains. Jace spotted movement, small, almost invisible, but deliberate. Machines, scouts, he couldn't tell. Lyra, however, seemed to sense them immediately. She stood on the buggy, her small hands raised slightly. The glowing object pulsed in response, casting soft blue light over her face. They are curious, she said. They know something is different. They want to understand. Jace frowned. Understand what? Lyra didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the horizon as if she were seeing things beyond human perception. Hours passed. The sun moved higher and Jace could feel the tension building. They returned to the settlement just as Mara arrived with news. Jace, she said quietly, others have been spotted near the canyon. Not human. They observed Lyra, then left, but they will return. Jace felt a cold weight settle over him. He had expected attention, but not so soon. The frontier had always been a place of surprises, but this was different. These watchers, whatever they were intelligent, cautious, and clearly aware of Lyra's abilities. What do they want? He asked. To learn, Mara said, but curiosity can turn to danger quickly. Jace nodded. He turned to Lyra, who was studying the glowing object again. Can you talk to them? He asked. Lyra's eyes sparkled. I can try, but only if we are careful. If they see fear, it will make them doubt us. That evening, Jace decided to confront his past. He couldn't ignore it any longer. Alone with Lyra in the outpost, he spoke softly. Lyra, you remind me of someone, he began. A long time ago, on a planet far from here, I promised to protect a child, but I failed. I thought she was gone forever. Lyra tilted her head. Do you remember her name? He hesitated, then whispered. I don't, not clearly. But the memory, the promise, it feels like it belongs to me, like it was part of my life that I lost. Lyra's eyes softened. Then perhaps that promise brought you to me. Maybe I am connected to her, and maybe to you. Jace felt a shiver run down his spine. Could it be possible? Could this child, lost in a crash on the frontier, be tied to a promise he had buried in memory? He wanted to deny it, but something deep inside him, something older than memory or logic, said it was true. Night fell over Silver Hollow. The stars twinkled brightly and Lyra climbed onto the roof of the outpost, her glowing object casting soft light across the settlement. Jace followed, standing beside her silently. They are closer now, she whispered, pointing toward the horizon. They are not hostile yet. They want to see if we are ready to meet them. Jace swallowed. Meet them? How? They will come here soon, Lyra said. We must be ready, and you must face your past. They will sense it if you try to hide. Jace nodded slowly. Facing his past had never been easy, but he realized that avoiding it was no longer an option. The Watchers, whatever they were, could see into intentions, into hearts, and if he wanted to protect Lyra, he had to confront the truth. Hours later, as the desert cooled under the starlit sky, a faint glow appeared in the distance. Not the sun, not the moon, but something different, soft, almost ethereal. Lyra's eyes widened and the object in her satchel pulsed brightly. "They are here," she whispered. Jace's heart pounded. He had spent years surviving the frontier's harshness, running from failures, hiding from memories. But now, standing beside this small, extraordinary child, he realized that survival alone was not enough. Humanity had more to offer: curiosity, empathy, courage. And it was time to show it. The glow grew brighter, revealing shapes moving across the desert, tall, elegant forms that shimmered in the starlight. They were not human, but they did not seem threatening. Their movements were careful, deliberate, almost respectful. "They are observing," Lyra said. "We must be calm. They will know if you are afraid." Jace took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of mistakes pressing on him. But alongside it, he felt a spark: hope, determination, and the quiet strength of humanity that had carried him across the frontier so many times. "You've got nothing to fear," he whispered to Lyra. "We face this together." She smiled faintly, and the object in her hands glowed brighter, casting a soft, warm light across both of them. The watchers paused, as if acknowledging their presence. And in that moment, Jace knew that the journey ahead would be unlike anything he had ever faced. He would confront his past, protect Lyra, and show that humanity, though fragile, flawed, and often underestimated, possessed a light that even the vastness of space could not dim. The watchers remained at the edge of the desert, silent and patient. Lyra's gaze never wavered, her small hand resting on the glowing object. And Jace, standing beside her, felt the weight of responsibility and the promise of redemption in the same moment. The frontier was no longer just a place of survival. It had become a stage for discovery, for connection, and for the quiet triumph of humanity's courage and kindness. And as the night deepened, the desert hummed softly under the starlight, carrying the promise of a meeting that would change everything. Not just for Jace, not just for Lyra, but for the future of all who lived under the stars. The desert was silent, except for the soft hum of the glowing object Lyra held. The watchers had arrived in full view, their tall, shimmering forms standing quietly at the edge of Silver Hollow. Jace Harding's heart beat faster, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had faced harsh storms, sand, and isolation on the frontier, but this was something different. This was a test of courage, understanding, and humanity itself. "They are here," Lyra whispered, standing beside him. Her small hands gripped the object tightly, and it pulsed gently in response to her calm confidence. "We must show them who we are," Jace swallowed hard. "And if they do not understand—" "They will," she said softly. "We only need to be ourselves." Jace looked at the watchers. Their forms glowed faintly under the starlight, shifting colors with every subtle movement. They were humanoid, but taller and more elegant, with long limbs and smooth features. Their faces were expressionless, yet he sensed intelligence and curiosity in their gaze. One of them stepped forward, its form shimmering more brightly. Jace felt a strange connection, as if it were reading him not with eyes but with something deeper. Lyra moved slightly in front of him. "Welcome," she said in a voice clear and steady. "We mean no harm." The watcher tilted its head, responding to her words. The object in her hands pulsed brightly, projecting a soft holographic glow into the air. Stars, planets, and strange symbols appeared, forming patterns that seemed to communicate ideas. The watchers' heads moved slightly in unison, observing, analyzing, and understanding. Jace felt a surge of pride. Humanity had always relied on strength and cleverness, but here, it was empathy, patience, and communication that mattered. Lyra's calm presence and the glowing object created a bridge between species, one that weapons or technology could never form. One watcher raised a hand, and the holographic display shifted to show an ancient human colony, thought lost decades ago. Jace's breath caught in his throat. The colony, the one he had been sent to protect, the one he had failed, was alive in memory, preserved in the eyes of these observers. "They remember," Lyra whispered. "They see what has happened and they know your promise." Jace swallowed hard, his mind flooded with memories. He remembered the chaos of that distant colony, the mission that went wrong, and the child he had failed to protect. Now, standing here, he realized that failure had never truly left him. But Lyra's presence offered a chance to fulfill that promise, even if it was decades late. The Watcher stepped closer, and Jace could feel its intelligence probing, not to harm, but to understand. He took a deep breath. I am Jace Harding," he said, voice steady despite the tension. "I failed once. I cannot change the past, but I will protect this child, and I will do whatever I can to help her fulfill her purpose." The Watcher's glow shifted, a soft ripple that felt like acknowledgement. Lyra smiled faintly. "They understand, and they are willing to listen." Jace felt a weight lift from his chest. The frontier had taught him survival, but now he realized survival alone was not enough. Humanity's greatest strength lay in courage, empathy, and the ability to connect with others, even those very different from themselves. As the night deepened, the Watchers extended their hands toward Lyra's glowing object. The air shimmered, and a soft hum filled the desert. Lyra's eyes closed, and she allowed the energy to flow between the Watchers and the object. Images and symbols flashed in the air, maps, histories, and records of human expansion. Jace watched in awe. These beings were intelligent, cautious, and observant, but not hostile. They were learning, understanding, and recognizing humanity's potential. He realized then that this was not a battle, but a test, a confrontation of spirit, not weapons. "Do you see?" Lyra whispered to him. "They want to know if we can be trusted, not just me, but humans. They are waiting for us to show our best qualities." Jace nodded slowly. "Then we show them." He stepped forward, raising his hand slightly to signal openness and honesty. The Watchers responded with subtle gestures, almost like a nod. Jace felt a strange connection, an unspoken understanding passing between them. His past failures were no longer chains but lessons. This was a chance to demonstrate humanity's true strength. Hours passed, and the exchange continued. Lyra guided the energy, projecting images of human settlements, culture, and ingenuity. Jace spoke of survival, cooperation, and the quiet resilience of humanity. He told stories of the frontier, of settlers building lives in harsh lands, of humans helping one another, and of compassion that transcended differences. The Watchers listened, and Jace felt their understanding grow. They were not easily impressed, but they recognized sincerity, courage, and the spark of intelligence that made humans unique. Lyra's presence, combined with Jace's honesty, created a bridge that no misunderstanding could cross. Finally, the Watchers paused. The air shimmered and their forms glowed softly in acknowledgement. Lyra smiled and turned to Jace. "They accept us," she said quietly. "Not just me but you. They know our intentions are pure." Jace exhaled, relief flooding through him. The past still lingered, but he had faced it, and in doing so, he had earned a measure of trust, not only from the Watchers but from himself. Humanity's resilience, empathy, and ingenuity had shone brightly in the starlit desert. The Watchers began to retreat, moving back toward the horizon. Before disappearing completely, one of them extended its hand toward Lyra, a gesture of recognition and respect. Lyra reached out, and the object pulsed brightly once more, sending a wave of light across the desert. "They will return," Lyra said, "when it is time, but they have seen us now. They understand what we can do." Jace nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The frontier had always demanded survival skills, but now he realized that humanity's true power lay in understanding, courage, and connection. The universe was vast and mysterious, but with empathy and intelligence, humans could face the unknown without fear. As they watched the Watchers disappear into the distance, Jace felt the weight of his past lift slightly. The promise he had buried for so long was no longer a burden, it was a guide. He had a second chance to protect, to guide, and to show that humanity's best qualities could shine even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes bright with hope. "We did it," she said. "Together." "Yes," Jace replied softly. "Together." The desert was quiet once more, but this time it felt different. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the courage, trust, and understanding that had just been proven. The frontier was no longer just a place of survival. It had become a place of discovery, of connection, and of hope. Jace and Lyra returned to the outpost, their bond stronger than ever. The glowing object rested safely beside Lyra, its pulse steady and calm. Jace knew that challenges would come again, but for the first time in many years, he felt prepared. Humanity had the ability to reach across the stars, to build bridges, and to shine brightly in ways he had never imagined. And as the night deepened, Jace gazed at the horizon, feeling the quiet hum of the universe. The Watchers had seen them, understood them, and recognized the strength within humanity. It was a small victory, but one that mattered greatly. Because sometimes the greatest confrontations were not fought with weapons, but with courage, trust, and the simple truth of being human. And for Jace Harding, standing beside the extraordinary child who had arrived from the stars, that truth was clearer than ever. The frontier awaited, filled with mystery, challenges, and promise, and humanity, resilient, curious, and courageous, was ready to meet it. The desert air was calm, the sky painted with the soft pink and orange of dawn. Silver Hollow stirred to life as the settlers began their morning routines, unaware of the extraordinary events that had unfolded the night before. Jace Harding stood on the small porch of his outpost, watching Lyra as she carefully arranged the glowing object on the table. The object pulsed gently, as if aware of the quiet determination radiating from both of them. "Today is important," Lyra said softly. Her eyes were bright, focused. "They will return, and this time we will show them everything." Jace nodded. He could feel it too, the sense that the Watchers, the observers from the stars, would soon arrive again. But this time they came not as mysterious figures on the horizon, but as witnesses to a choice, a test of humanity's best qualities. "You're ready," he said. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Lyra smiled faintly. "I am always ready, but you must let go of the past. Only then can you help them understand." Jace swallowed hard. Letting go of the past had never been easy. For years he had carried the memory of a lost child, a promise broken, a mission failed. He had built walls around his heart, convincing himself that survival and distance were enough. But now, standing beside Lyra, he realized that true courage meant facing the memories he had buried. He took a deep breath and spoke quietly. "I remember the promise I made. I thought I lost her forever, but now I understand. She brought me here. She helped me see that I can still make a difference." Lyra's eyes softened. "Yes, that is why you are here. That is why we are here. And that is why they will understand us." Hours passed. The settlement was busy with daily chores, but Jace's focus never wavered. He and Lyra prepared the glowing object, aligning it carefully in the center of the outpost courtyard. The energy from it radiated softly, filling the space with warmth and light. And then, on the horizon, the Watchers appeared. This time, they moved with purpose. Their shimmering forms advanced slowly, respectfully, pausing at the edge of the settlement. Jace felt a quiet hum in the air, the kind that resonated deep in the chest, like the pulse of the universe itself. Lyra stepped forward, holding the glowing object in front of her. She looked at the Watchers and spoke clearly. "We are humans. We mean no harm. We offer understanding, cooperation, and friendship." The Watchers tilted their heads, observing, analyzing. Their energy radiated a quiet curiosity, a sense that they were reading not only the words but the intentions behind them. Jace stepped beside Lyra, holding his hands open in a gesture of honesty and peace. "We have made mistakes," he said, voice steady. "We are not perfect. But we learn, we grow. We care for one another, for the small, the fragile, the unexpected. That is who we are." The glowing object pulsed brighter, projecting images into the air, planets, settlements, stars, and stories of human resilience. Jace spoke of courage in the face of hardship, of cooperation between settlers on harsh worlds, of empathy that had saved lives without ever raising a weapon. The watchers observed, their forms shifting subtly in response. And then Lyra extended the object toward them. A soft energy flowed from it, weaving around the watchers like threads of light. The images changed, showing the frontier, Silver Hollow, and the quiet lives of people building a future on a harsh planet. Jace realized then that the watchers were not just observing, they were learning. They were witnessing humanity's potential, not through conflict or force, but through the quiet strength of curiosity, empathy, and perseverance. "They understand," Lyra whispered. "They see what humans can be, and they respect it." Jace's chest swelled with pride, but also with humility. Humanity's greatest victories were never measured in battles won or enemies defeated. They were found in small acts of kindness, in courage that faced the unknown, in the resilience that built life where none should have survived. And now, standing beside this extraordinary child, he saw that light reflected in the eyes of the watchers. Hours passed as the exchange continued. Lyra guided the energy, projecting histories and possibilities. Jace spoke of exploration, invention, and the quiet heroism found in every settlement, every outpost, every individual who dared to hope. The watchers absorbed it all, and Jace sensed their understanding deepening. Then, one watcher moved forward, reaching toward the object. Jace felt a surge of energy flow through him, not dangerous but exhilarating. The object pulsed in harmony with the watcher, creating a wave of light that spread across the courtyard. The energy connected them all, human, child, and watchers, in a silent bond of trust and respect. "They accept us fully," Lyra said, her voice trembling with quiet joy. "Not just me but you, they see our hearts." Jace exhaled slowly. The weight of his past, the mistakes he had carried for decades, felt lighter. The promise he had made, the failure he had believed permanent, was redeemed, not erased but transformed into something greater. He had protected the child, guided her, and shown that humanity's light could shine even across the vast reaches of space. The watchers shimmered softly, then slowly began to retreat, moving back toward the horizon. Before disappearing entirely, one extended its hand, a gesture of respect and recognition. Lyra reached out, and the glowing object pulsed brightly, sending a wave of warmth and light into the desert. "They will remember," she whispered. "And they will return when the time is right, but we have proven ourselves today." Jace nodded. The journey had been long, the stakes high, but the outcome was clear. Humanity had shown its strength, not through weapons or aggression, but through courage, empathy, and the ability to connect with others. As the watchers faded into the distance, Lyra turned to Jace, her eyes shining. "We did it," she said. "Together." "Yes," Jace replied softly. "Together." The desert was quiet once more, but the silence was different now. It was filled with promise, with the sense that the frontier was more than just dust and rocks. It was a place of discovery, of growth, and of connections that could reach across the stars. Jace and Lyra returned to the outpost, placing the glowing object carefully on a shelf. Its soft pulse filled the room, a reminder of the bridge they had built between species, between past and present, between failure and redemption. "Do you think they will come back?" Jace asked. "They will," Lyra said, "and next time we will be ready. Humanity is not just survival, it is hope, curiosity, and courage. That is what they will see." Jace smiled. For the first time in many years, he felt at peace. The frontier had taught him resilience, but today he had learned something greater. That humanity's light, its ability to care, to understand, to persevere, was stronger than any obstacle, greater than any fear. He looked at Lyra, remembering the small child who had arrived in a crash who had whispered, "Please take her in." That simple plea had changed everything. It had brought him face to face with the past, challenged him to rise above it, and allowed him to witness the extraordinary potential of human kindness and courage. "Thank you," he said quietly. Lyra smiled. "No, thank you. You kept your promise. You showed them who we are." Outside, the wind carried the soft hum of the universe. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the triumph not of weapons or power, but of understanding, trust, and human spirit. Silver Hollow continued its quiet life, but it was changed now. The people of the settlement would continue to live, build, and explore, inspired by the events of that day. And somewhere, across the vast reaches of space, watchers would remember the courage, empathy, and resilience of humanity. Jace stood once more on the porch, looking at the horizon. The frontier was still wide, still wild, still unpredictable, but he was no longer alone in facing it. He had Lyra by his side, the glowing object as a symbol of connection, and the knowledge that humanity's true strength lay not in conquest, but in the ability to care, to understand, and to shine its light even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. And with that, the cowboy smiled. He had faced his past, protected the future, and witnessed the power of humanity's heart. The journey was far from over, but now he knew. No matter what lay ahead, humans could rise to meet the unknown, with courage, kindness, and hope leading the way. Because sometimes, the greatest victories were not fought with strength or force, but with the quiet, enduring light of the human spirit. And in that light, Jace Harding and Lyra walked into the dawn, ready to face the frontier and the universe together.